Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Axis MBA Spotlight on the topic of the advantages of a full-time MBA program. Today with us, we have three international business schools. We have EU Business School, we have Rotterdam School of Management, and University of Geneva, Geneva School of Economics and Management. Thank you again for being with us. My name is Zornica Licheva, and I'm a content writer and editor for Advent Group. I will be facilitating the podcast today. And to begin the conversation, I would first like to ask you to briefly present yourselves. Perhaps we can start with the EU Business School.
Sure. So my name is Nick Cowles. I'm the head of sales and recruitment at EU. I've been personally working with EU for 7 years now and predominantly managing student recruitment in Asia and the Middle East. So I've had a lot to do with undergraduate as well as masters and MBA applicants over the last 7 years.
I see. Thank you, Nick. We could go on with Rotterdam School of Management.
Great, thank you. My name is Vasileios Zaravellas. I'm currently the Assistant Director for MBA Admissions and Marketing here at the Rotterdam School of Management. I am basically mostly responsible for all the admission processes for the three MBA programs that the school is offering, and I've been currently working with the school for the past 3.5 years.
Great, thank you, Vasilis. And of course, Geneva, University of Geneva.
Sure, my name is Philippe de Castro, Education Department, as you mentioned, at the Geneva School of Economics and Management. I'm currently managing the IU MBA, which is an MBA for International Organizations Management, and I'm working in executive education programs for the past 10 years.
Great. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. Well, first I would like to start with a bit of a more general question regarding MBA programs so that our listeners could really get to know each of the business schools better. So the question is, what types of MBA programs does each business school actually offer? Philippe, perhaps we can start with you.
So at the University of Geneva, we offer two MBA programs. First one is an executive MBA program, a part-time program for participants with an average working experience of 7+ years. And then we have a full-time MBA program called International Organizations MBA for participants with an average work experience of 3+ years. It's a full-time program that welcomes participants with the willingness to work for international non-profit organizations.
I see, right. Thank you. Vasilis, what about the programs at Rotterdam School of Management?
Great. So here at the Rotterdam School of Management, we offer three different MBA programs. So we have our International Full-Time MBA program, which is a 12-month program, and it basically attracts people from all over the world. On average, the class profile has about 6 to 7 years of working experience. We have our Executive Part-Time MBA program, which is designed for professionals who would like to work and study at the same time. It's a 22-month program. There, the class profile usually has 10+ years of working experience. And last but not least, our Global One MBA program. It's an executive program which collaborates with another 4 universities around the world. And that program attracts far more senior people with 16 or 17 years of experience plus.
Okay, so there are different options depending on what candidates are looking for. Great. And Nick, what about EU Business School?
Yeah, so we also offer a variety of specializations ranging from the traditional ones to the most up-to-date areas of business. These specializations would include international business, communication and public relations, entrepreneurship, sports management, e-business. That's just to name a few. We also offer an online MBA, which is designed obviously for people unable to come to the campus and study at one of our 4 campuses. And the flexibility of this program obviously allows students to be empowered without compromising their career and their family life.
Great, thank you. So we can see that there is a variety of MBA programs indeed that applicants could choose depending on their own needs and requirements. But what is unique about the full-time MBA program then compared to other types of formats? Vasilis, could you explain?
Yes, of course. As of course the word suggests, the program requires people to quit their job and focus solely on their studies. So the uniqueness of the program is that people can actually relocate from one country to another. So as my colleague said, the part-time programs, for example, are for people who would like to continue working and studying at the same time. But the full-time, I think, it's mainly for people who are looking for a far more radical change. So the type of the program really allows them to solely focus on that and look for new opportunities, new challenges upon graduation.
I see. Philippe, what about the uniqueness of the full-time MBA programs at Geneva?
Maybe an important component is the fact that there is a real immersion experience for the participant, a learning experience that is quite different from a part-time MBA in the sense that for at least 12 months or plus, depending on the type of MBA or full-time MBA, the participant is really focused on studying, on creating his network, on exchanging with the other participants, on gaining some experience from the professors, be able to concentrate for such like a year or more on studies is a really different experience than having to deal with work experience, work duties at the same time.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Nick, what about EU Business School?
Well, I would say perhaps not fully unique, but a real strength, I would say, of the program at EU is the strong connections we have to real businesses and real business people. So, students at EU can interact with industry experts and leading international businesses really right on their doorstep, whether it be in Barcelona, Geneva, Montreux, or Munich, where we have our campuses. But we regularly have, guest speakers who come to EU and share their expertise. And they've even been known to help students find whether it be internship or jobs through their extensive network. So that emphasizes what Philippe was saying, just this networking aspect, which is a real strength, I would say, at EU.
Thank you. Okay, so we can basically see how full-time programs may differ from part-time programs, but how do full-time formats differ among different business schools? Perhaps we can start with Vasilis again.
Yes, thank you. I think a main difference between programs can be the duration. So you can look into a 12-month program, a 15-month program, or a 2-year program as a full time. So that's the main difference between the business schools. It's also about the focus and the specializations that the different schools offer. Here in Rotterdam, we have 5 different tracks that people can choose from, whether they would like to focus on strategy, sustainability, or finance, just to mention a few of them. Um, and again, it also differs on the class sizes, the profiles of the different students attracted, the industries that the students are coming from, and how international the class would be. Here in Rotterdam, we have on a yearly basis about 97% of our classroom having international students.
Right, okay. Nick, what about some other differences that come up to mind?
Well, regarding the full-time MBA programs and how they can differ, is I would say that the quality of teaching obviously can differ. I would say a high caliber faculty, which is made up of full-time academics as well as part-time instructors. These people are active members of the international business community, and that's a real strength. Being located in cities such as Barcelona, Munich, Geneva, and even Montreux, these are cities that attract leaders, and influential people in their spheres. So that's as a full-time MBA program, I think you get a lot more access to these people as a full-time MBA student. But the experience of the MBA also depends, I would say, a lot on the location. This is one aspect of what a full-time MBA is at EU, what that can bring.
I see. Of course, location is also important. Philippe, what about Geneva and your business school?
Yeah, maybe to build upon the idea of location, having an MBA specialized in international organizations management in Geneva is quite a strong component. I would say what maybe differs between different full-time MBAs is also the pedagogical approach. We, as MBA focused international relations management, try to focus a lot on the applied experience, inviting guest speakers and professors working here in internationalization headquarters or in the field of international NGOs or others, with the objective for participants to leave after a year with tools and ability to work and apply it in their working context.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you. Well, we can see that there are a lot of aspects that candidates need to consider. There is the aspect of duration of the program, there is teaching, location, of course. So, how can candidates then, especially those from abroad, judge the quality and the reputation of an MBA program? How can they decide more easily? Nick, what would you say?
Yeah, well, there are many international organizations and publications that rank business school MBAs. The high standard of the programs at EU and the achievements of our students, the professional experience, the dedication and hard work of our faculty, and are all recognized consistently by magazines such as CEO Magazine or the Financial Times. We also are regularly listed by QS Top MBA.
Okay, so rankings are one metric that candidates could use. Vasileios, what about Rotterdam School of Management? What would you advise candidates on their decision-making process?
Yes, of course. So rankings is also always important. So as one of the top 10 European business schools, and with our full time being within the top 30 in the world, that's definitely a first step for the candidate to be able to look into the quality. At the same time, accreditation. All of our programs are Triple Crown accredited, so the candidates can really be ensured that we offer a very high standard of teaching and quality within our MBA programs. The success stories from our alumni, the connection that we have also with the business across the globe, these are also things that attract the candidates and ensures them the quality of the program. We always travel across the globe, so we also offer meetings with different candidates, and we can talk to them. They can meet alumni, they can meet our faculty. So we always offer them the opportunity to experience the RSM spirit and philosophy.
Interesting. So, in-person feedback is also important, of course. Felipe, what would you say?
What could I add? Yeah, sure. Accreditation, very important component. The rankings. I think a student that is willing to attend a full-time MBA really needs to invest some time, but also some energy to maybe go for a campus visit, try to attend a class or some classes in different institutions, really to have a kind of experience of what you will have during a year after. So I would really advise students to move to go for campus visits, to meet with alumni, with the practitioners, with the current students before making any decision on investing then for a year studies.
Yes, that's great advice indeed. Thank you. Well, some of you mentioned earlier that to start a full-time MBA program, participants need to quit their jobs and really commit themselves to the program. So, in that sense, when is the right time, career-wise, for a professional to enroll in a full-time program? What would you say, Vasilis? What can you add to that topic?
Yeah, I think that is always relevant. If you see, like, within our full-time MBA program, we have students ranging anywhere from 25 up to late 30s. So I would say it depends on what the candidate is looking for and why they want to do a full-time study. Uh, what I always see is that they're looking for three radical changes, whether this will be a geography change, an industry change, or a functional change. So there's never, I would say, a right time for somebody to choose that. So that's why we take a very personal approach on every candidate to really discuss their motivation, their focus, and why they want to do that.
Hmm.
So I would say it depends on the needs of the candidate.
Okay, I see. Thank you. Nick, what would you say on the topic? Can it be too early or too late for somebody to consider a full-time program?
Yeah, well, to add to that answer, I think that was a very good answer. We obviously an MBA is designed for people that do have work experience. So we're looking at students that have 2 or more years as a minimum. So they can really build and apply what they're going to learn. But yeah, in terms of an ideal age, I mean, I've had contact with students that were in their 40s, and they came and in an era where things are changing so rapidly, a digital era, those guys in their 40s will probably have at least 20 years of work experience or a professional career to come, so this could have a huge impact on their personal life and their career, their personal life. So I wouldn't say you can be too old. I would say one can be too young. So I generally we look at applicants who have at least those 2 years, but ideally 3, 4, 5 years it makes more sense.
All right, thank you. And as a follow-up, what would you advise candidates who have found out that it is perhaps not the right time? So, what are some other alternatives that they could think of?
Well, at EU we also offer an MSc, which is pretty similar to the MBA in terms of the content. The cohort's obviously quite a lot younger, but the way the case studies and the work will be pitched to those students will be better adapted to freshers, students that are coming out of an academic, not just finished their bachelor degrees. So for younger students, we would suggest the MSc. For older students that aren't sure, I think the online option is a really good way to go. We also have professional development programs, things that they could, dip their foot in the water, as it were,
Right.
and see. That's something that we're also offering a micro MBA, which is something that is pretty new for EU Business School. But these are various options. They don't have to go, plunge in the deep end and go for
Right.
full MBA.
Thank you. Philippe, do you have anything to add to the topic, perhaps?
Yeah, I would say that for sure, if career-wise participants don't have don't have the time or the meaning to invest in an MBA for either reasons being too young or old, you should probably also look for short degree granting programs focusing on very specific components that he or she wants to reinforce: management, on leadership, on finance, or any other type of area that could be important for at least gaining some professional experience or being able to achieve the career goals.
Okay, I see. Thank you. Um, well, we have found out that really full commitment is required for this program, although there are other options, of course. But what are the advantages really of the full-time format career-wise, and how does it boost career progression for candidates after they graduate? Nick, perhaps we can start with you.
Yeah, well, full-time MBA students fully immerse themselves in the academic experience. So I think the key word is immersion. So during their studies, these students develop a thorough knowledge of every aspect of business, from economics to e-business, from strategy to people management. They also have the best possibility really to build long-term relationships, and it perfectly equips them. for their graduation and to enter the local job market.
All right, thank you. Philippe?
So I think from my side and what I see at the University of Geneva, there is two very important components, which is networking and career services. Networking because as a full-time student, participants will be very much exposed to the industry, to the people working in the area, in the city, and through the professors and the other participants and guest speakers, be able to develop a network that will create opportunities at a later stage. Career services because this is actually the link with the industry. What the career service provides can be different depending on the MBA program, but what we propose here at the University of Geneva is to work on three different areas, which is firstly on the skills. What are the skills needed to find the position we want to have? Self-leadership, being able to better identify what our strengths and what our career goals, and then mentoring, being able through the alumni network to reach out whatever organization we want to work in after the MBA.
I see. Great. Vasileios, how would you comment?
Yes, so also from our side, I think the immersion, as mentioned before, is very important. For us, what we see is that people in the full time, they live and breathe the program. So they're solely focused on their studies. They have great opportunities to network within the program, not only also within their own class, but they also mingle with our executive MBA program, which also offers them the opportunity to study along with working professionals within the Netherlands. Our Career Development Center is heavily involved also in the full time by offering personal coaching sessions. We run MBA career fairs, different company visits, presentations, workshops, competitions. So the students have a great opportunity to learn and to connect with the industry and potentially to find the next employer even before graduation.
All right, I see. So we have found out that networking is really one of the core elements of securing a career boost after graduation. And you have mentioned some interesting examples. You have mentioned some coaching sessions and networking opportunities. But for example, Vasileios, can you think of some other options that are offered at Rotterdam School of Management, such as projects or internships, perhaps?
Yeah, so within the full-time MBA program, part of their curriculum, they have to do what we call the Living Management Consulting Project. So on a yearly basis, we have a number of different companies coming in-house to offer real life projects to the teams of the students. So basically, the students become consultants, so they work directly with the company for a period of 3 weeks. And a lot of times it has occurred that the students continued working with the company on the project, and eventually that led to a job offer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great example of how the students can be directly connected with a company. But also we offer internships after the classes are completed before graduation. These are not mandatory. However, we do offer them that service if they would like to take that opportunity, and especially for people who are looking for a radical change in their career.
I see. Is there a particular period that the internship has to last for, or how does it work?
That will depend really on the company. So a lot of times you will see an internship big anywhere between 3 to 6 months.
I see, thank you. Nick, what about some other examples from EU Business School?
Talking about being directly connected to businesses, once again, the strength, I would say, at EU is the city locations, both Geneva, Barcelona, Munich, and Monaco. Recently, we've taken students on industrial visits or to these international organizations. We've gone to the UN or Garmin, FC Barcelona, UEFA, Nestle, BMW, just to name a few. And it's really an integral part of the MBA curriculum, and to give these students behind the scenes access and a privileged look to how businesses operate, while also providing an additional opportunity or first-hand interaction with a lot of these global business leaders. Students need to be entrepreneurial nowadays. That's definitely something I say to students that are looking to apply to EU. So we can you point them in many directions, but at the end of the day, it's not the hospitality industry where internships are handed out. In a business environment, we're looking for creative solution finders and people that are willing to go out there and make it happen. So the connections are there via EU. We're looking for self-starters who can make the most of these opportunities we offer.
I see. And having mentioned the importance of location once again, can I assume that these different campus locations of EU Business School can really facilitate the movement of MBA candidates? So can they transfer from one campus to another and experience different internship opportunities, for example?
Yeah, right. Once again, I mean, many of the students that are coming are global citizens or people that are already keen to have exposure and to see how different people work, different industries operate, and so we definitely encourage that transfer. The MBA is split into 3 terms: the full-time 1-year MBA. So in theory, students can actually transfer from Spain, Switzerland, Germany, and 1 term in each. Very few students do that. We see one transfer being a typical approach. But what we do try encourage the students to do is if we've got an event, for example, we have a careers fair, which we typically hold in Barcelona, where we may have 15 to 30 different companies that come and are there to meet with the students. We ask the students at other campuses if they're keen to attend. And we do see a fair amount of movement from students, whether it be to Switzerland or Spain or Germany. So yeah, that's important for us.
I see, thank you. Philippe, you also mentioned quite a few examples of career opportunities that you provide for MBA students. Is there something else that could be interesting?
In terms of side the curriculum, there is a 3-month internship, which is mandatory, as a student has to perform a master thesis, an applied master thesis. So to do that, we have partnership with different internationalizations and NGOs that we invite throughout the year, so they can present their institution and also present their job or internship opportunities. This goes along also with we try to customize our service to the student needs and objectives, in the sense that we know that even though the field is important, there is very specific objectives for each student, very specific strengths they want to use. So being able or having very strong links with our alumni community, for whom most of them are still based in Geneva and working in the field, they are for us very important because they are the ones who create this close link with many different institutions, many different departments, and this is it will be the ones that will really being able to coach the students through to attend the objective of working for a specific organization.
I see, thank you. So we have found out that the full-time MBA is a solid investment, both in terms of time and budget and other factors. So what is required for the full-time MBA studies, and how does that investment compare to the one required by other MBA formats? Nick, we could start with you.
Yeah, well, there's several elements to look at. I could, speak about tuition fees and living expenses, estimated living expenses. Obviously, students need to look at what they call return on investments, and that's, I feel, once again, a point which has been fairly strong with our graduates. We, got some statistics showing that students are earning 138% higher than what they were earning prior to joining the MBA. So that's a strong point. I would say, just to give an idea of what it would cost for a student, you're looking at an MBA at EU Business School at a Barcelona or Munich campus, which would be about 20 to 23,000 euros. And then in Switzerland, it would be 37,000 Swiss francs. And then living expenses, I jotted down here, would be about 1,300 euros per month in Germany, and in Spain, maybe there or thereabouts. And then in Switzerland, it's about 1,500 to 1,000 francs per month.
I see. And how do your full-time MBA participants normally finance their studies?
I would say it's 50-50 in terms of those that are privately funded through their families, and others that have saved up over the last few years of work. And then we've got a large portion now that also take finance. They take loans, and I think many students do that nowadays around the world. So you really have three categories of people.
I see. Thank you. Vasileios, what about the investment required at Rotterdam School of Management?
Yes. So for our full-time MBA program, the tuition fees are set on 47,000 euros, plus of course the living expenses, which for Rotterdam is roughly around 1,300 euros a month. So that's something, of course, that the students also need to take into account when they also considering different programs around the globe or within Europe. And again, for us, the students, they either use private funding, like from their families, savings, but of course study loans. And a very important component is that we also have financial aid for our candidates. So we have budgets for our full-time MBA program with all sorts of different scholarships available that they can potentially cover up to about 20-25% of their tuition fees.
Yes, that is also an important aspect. And Philippe, what about the case with the University of Geneva?
The fees are 39,500 Swiss francs, and the living expenses are around, I would say, 1,500 per month. What we do to help students is also to provide student accommodation at the University of Geneva campus. We offer scholarships, merit scholarships only for the full-time program. And for sure, participants finance their studies through the different components my colleagues just said, knowing that we also have some links with loans companies and I would say foundations that also support or provide some financial support to students.
I see. And as a follow-up question to that, how do you think that type of investment actually differs from other formats, both in terms of financial investment and time management?
I would say the big difference is that usually a student attending a full-time program is not working part-time, so obviously is not able or she's not able to finance the studies working. So savings have to be done before, and the student needs really to have a type of kind of life plan for the 2-3 years after the MBA to make sure he or she will find a way. However, what we also see is that participants coming from a full-time program will more likely be able to really attend or reach their objective, because when you quit your job and you finish your studies, you are totally focused on finding an opportunity or a job that will fulfill your objectives or career goals. When you go for a part-time MBA, you will most likely remain at your job afterwards. Maybe you will be promoted or have a better position, but the change will not be as important as for those going for a full-time MBA.
Right, that's a crucial difference indeed. And Nick, what about scholarships at EU Business School? Is this something that could be of help to potential candidates?
Yes, we do have scholarships available. on several bases. Obviously a merit-based scholarship is the most common one. But it can go, we've got 3 tiers really. You're looking at 10, 20 or 30% scholarships which are available. We also, for the Swiss campus, we've got certain nationalities where we've got an allocated number of scholarships available as well. In a nutshell, to be brief, we do offer scholarships, yes.
Okay, thank you. That could be useful to listeners. We have already touched upon briefly on the topic of studying abroad, taking a full-time program abroad, compared to staying in your own home country. Considering full-time MBA participants have to leave their jobs, why is it worthwhile to study abroad instead of stay in their own home country? What do you think, Vasileios?
Yes. So as I mentioned earlier, on a yearly basis, around 97% of our students in our full-time MBA program are internationals. So people who are looking to study abroad, they're looking for the international exposure. They're looking to study and work alongside with people with all sorts of different backgrounds, industry backgrounds, cultural. So for me, it's worthwhile doing that, especially if you're looking to really have a global mindset and be able to work abroad. That's most of the times the most important change that people are looking for, especially when they travel. They move from Asia to Europe or from the US to Europe. So they also acquire a broad network within the country of the study. So that's also another important component for when people decide where they would like to go to, because they can vision themselves studying here and then getting a job in Europe. So I think it's definitely worthwhile instead of staying at your home country, if of course your finances also allow you to make such a move.
Right, that's interesting. So it's not just the importance of connections, it's also the global mindset itself. Thank you. And Philippe, what about the case of University of Geneva?
From my point of view, it all comes to the issue of the career goals. For the internationalizations MBA located in Geneva, we have students coming from all over the world with the objective of working for important internationalizations, UN agencies, or international NGOs, knowing that most of them have their headquarters or have offices here in Geneva. So, sure, moving and studying abroad is important, but finding a city that will really help the student to achieve his career goals is very the most important component.
I see, thank you. And Nick, could you comment as well?
Yeah, well, thinking about this question, I thought of an analogy with, you've got the Camp Nou in Barcelona, for example, which is a famous football stadium. And I've never been there, but I can imagine watching the game on TV or going to the stadium is a completely different experience. And I think it's a fair analogy to say you can be part of the game when you're watching it on TV, but it's not this immersion, what we were really talking about earlier. And I would completely agree with my colleagues. You've got to kind of list your professional and personal goals, but there's no way you can compare, an MBA in your own country with that, an MBA elsewhere. It will really stretch you on a personal level, and I think that's much of where the value will be gained. It's not necessarily the theory or the case studies or things you're going to gain in class, but it's the holistic immersion in a culture and this cosmopolitan experience, which will no doubt be better than if you studied in your own country. So I would definitely encourage most MBA candidates to consider studies abroad.
Right, very, very interesting analogy indeed. And what about those international students who have partners or spouses, for example, or simply need support for family members, considering they need to move abroad? So do business schools provide such support throughout the duration of the MBA? Philippe, how could you comment?
We have a career. We have a visa service here, the program that supports students and their dependents when they need to apply for a student visa here in Switzerland. We also provide accommodations for students, but we have also some accommodations we have who are bigger for students coming with their families. So that's the type of support we provide to such students.
Okay, thank you. Vasilis?
Yes, for us it's the same. So here within in the Netherlands, when people come with their families, because on a yearly basis we have people moving here with their families, even with kids. The government offers also a dependent visa for their spouses. So that's something that the school is also offering and assisting the students to do that. We have family housing available as well. So people who come here with families, they have access to that. We also have a daycare here on campus, so especially for people with kids, they can use that service as well here on campus. And also within the program, there are different clubs and organizations that also the spouses and the partners can be involved, because we do understand that when you move to a different country, and especially the first few months, you need to be able to integrate. So we also help the students' partners to do that as well.
Great, that sounds good. Integration is also important for family members, of course. And Nick, can you add anything to that?
Not much, other than the fact that the countries where we operate in as well also offer this dependent visa option. So it's often a question from applicants, MBA applicants, if their dependents can come, and we've got multiple examples of more senior applicants coming through with dependents. And so as an MBA or business school, typically it's a lot smaller in scale than a university. So this personalized approach, whether it be through the visa services department or just the student services department in general, we're there to offer advice. We're there to really go the extra mile when it comes to assisting the students in their particularities. But yeah, we don't offer specific services other than the support we'll give to the applicant and obviously to the family that should come as well.
Good to know. And for the final part of our discussion, we have some very interesting questions to sort of wrap it up. So, what are some of the most exciting or interesting career success stories that you can tell us about from students or from alumni? Vasilis, how could you comment?
Yeah, I think there are numerous examples on that. I was actually thinking about this yesterday. I think one of the greatest examples I can use is a lady who joined us from Ecuador 3 years ago, and she used to work as an engineer for an airline company. And upon graduation, she managed to become a consultant with one of the biggest consulting firms. So that's definitely one success story for people who are looking for such a radical change, and especially for students who are looking to go into consulting afterwards. But I think it's not just about that. All the students can share their successes, and they are able to say that they've managed to find a great job that fulfill their dream. So it's not just about the title, it's not just about the company, but we've seen people who came in from large corporates, and then later on they moved into an NGO because that really fulfilled their dream, and that really fulfilled what they wanted to do in their lives. So a success story is also relevant to every student.
I see. Yeah, it's a very interesting change of industry. Nick, what about some examples from EU Business School?
Yeah, so we obviously list a lot of different examples of different industries on our blog and on our Facebook and the website, obviously. But having worked with EU for all these years, there's certain candidates that have stood out over the years. I travel to India a lot, and I've worked with two Indian students that, we looked at their profiles and the change of industry as well. We had one guy who was an engineer based in a company near Delhi, and he's always been passionate about sports. He loves cricket, as most Indians do. And he came to Barcelona hoping to do an MBA in sports management. And that's exactly what happened for him. So he's working for Aspire Sports Consultancy, which is based in Qatar. And he travels a lot for his work. He works in Spain as well as the Middle East. They're back into India. So that's one example. And then we've got another girl who was working in finance, and she was based in Pune in India, and she was hoping to look at risk management. So she did global banking and finance at EU, and she found a really good opportunity at Alliance as well in Munich. So those are two examples. We've got guys that have gone on to have really good careers in BMW, on Facebook, and other top companies as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so those are some interesting examples of career change with aviation, as you said, or with sports. But what about lately the topic of entrepreneurship is becoming more and more popular. So are there some examples at EU Business School of people who have really started their own business and have become successful?
Yeah, very much so. The profile, even the owners of the business school are already passionate about entrepreneurship. Within the management structure of EU, you've got a lot of, the family-driven business. So the DNA of entrepreneurship runs through everything we do. Even 40 to 50% of the applicants are either from family businesses or have been involved in startups. Many of the students are running their own company to do when they come. So off the top of my head, I can think of various examples. I can't go into the details of one, but we have on our website on the EU blog, we definitely put that right up front. The fact that we've got young entrepreneurs that are running their own companies.
Right.
So yeah, plenty of examples on the website.
Thank you. So listeners can definitely check out the websites of each of the schools and read some alumni stories. Philippe, what about some interesting examples from Geneva School of Economics and Management?
I was in New York a few months ago, and I met with a few alumni there, and I came to know that actually two of them were now married, and it was quite interesting for us because they met actually during the program, so it was quite a life-changing story for them. Otherwise, more in a professional way, I would think about two examples. One, and is linked with the idea of entrepreneurship you mentioned before. One participant launched a few years, an alumni launched a few years ago, her own NGO, very active on women's rights, and it's a very successful today NGO, very recognized, and she has now quite an important existence in this field. And a second example is last year's students who started a job at the World Bank in Washington only a few months ago with the support of a former professor they had last year. So all to say that yes, there is for sure really nice stories happening, can be more in a professional way or more in a more private area, but very nice things happen for sure.
Great, that's very nice. So, do you mean that not only students keep in touch after graduation, but also students and professors?
Yeah, and this is something we really value in our faculty, is that they are still available even a few years after the program to support or to advise our students when they are looking for a job, when they are applying for a job, knowing that our faculty is very well represented in the industry. Most of them have been working or done some consultancy in many different internationalizations. So they are very much engaged to support students even a few years after they had the degree.
Great. Vasileios, any perhaps entrepreneurial examples that we haven't mentioned from Rotterdam School of Management?
Yeah, also for us on a yearly basis, we have a number of students who actually kick off with their own companies after graduation. And a very important component here as well that I wanted to mention is the direct relationship that we have with the Erasmus Center of Entrepreneurship, which is located at the Science Tower at the Port of Rotterdam. So all of our students, they have direct access to that center, which provides them access to an incubator. They can go, they can discuss with different startups, they can pitch their ideas to potential investors. So we run different entrepreneurship boot camps on a yearly basis. So students who are particularly interested in entrepreneurship, they definitely have the tools to help them achieve their goals in that area.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you. And I think it's an interesting question to really wrap up the discussion. What do you personally find most exciting and worthwhile about the full-time MBA? Perhaps we can start with Nick.
International exposure, really to different academic, economic, cultural, language, climatic environments. And I think this is massively enriching on both a personal and professional level.
Right, thank you. Vasileios, what about your comment?
Yeah, definitely. I think, especially when we meet students or candidates around the globe, I always say don't see that as a year off in your life. This is a year that you can invest in yourselves and develop yourselves further. About acquiring the international experience, the knowledge, the global mindset, challenge themselves because you definitely challenge yourself a lot through that year. It's about being able to self-reflect and be able to make the next step. So I think personally this is the most exciting part of a full-time MBA.
Great, good advice, thank you. Philippe, what about you?
You do an MBA once in your life, and doing a full-time MBA in our days in a very rapidly changing world where we work under pressure, having the opportunity just for a year to leave work behind, focus on studies, invest on yourself, and leave after this year with all the tools and the abilities to face the challenges that you will face then during all your career is a very important and exciting in the sense that after the year of studies you feel like another person.
Okay, I understand. Thank you again, everyone, for participating in the podcast today. This is the end of the discussion. This will be available online soon, and thank you again for participating.